Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from Beyond. I'm Zeckthar,
And I'm Yuksen.
and we are the chroniclers of all that was and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We have seen the rise and fall of many empires, yet this month we'll be going fast because we'll be discussing the White Scars.
Indeed, we will be getting back to our usual 1-month program. And this month we will discuss speed, as well as some notable characters and the Great Khan himself. And let's not forget the Q&A at the end of the month, when we answer your questions.
That's right, but before we start, if you like our stuff, feel free to follow, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you really like our boxes, feel free to join our membership program, like Sir Bender Byington, our very first member.
Quite right, brother. And thank you to our newest member, Hermes Skirty. Wait, that's not right. We have a new member, Andarchy 138.
Indeed. Thank you, Andarchy, for joining our membership squad. A longtime listener who has shown up to nearly all of our premieres since, since we started doing them. Give the doggos a scratch behind the ear for me, will you?
Yes, and perhaps a small sausage treat as well on Yuksen's tab. Well, what are we going to talk about today, Zeckthar?
Well, as you know, Yuksen, today is our favorite part of the show. Notable characters. And I figured what better way to start than the chapter master himself, the great Khan Jubal.
Hold on a sec.
What?
If you just throw out the Great Khan Jubal out there, some people will be confused.
Why?
Well, unless we had briefly mentioned it in one of our prior voxes, we've never brought up the fact that after Jagatai disappeared, the title of Great Khan is given to the White Scars chapter master. Likewise, Khan is the title for captains, and companies are called brotherhoods.
Fair enough. Well, now you have. How about you tell us about the current Great Khan, Jubal Khan? Eh?
Jubal was named the Great Khan of the White Scars after the previous chapter master, Jubal Khan, who disappeared while fighting the Drukhari in 943.M41. To be made a Great Khan, one must survive trials set by the Stormseers within the Valley of Khans. What the candidates must face during the trials remains a mystery, as none who survive them ever again will speak of what transpired within the Valley of Khans. Whenever they are, 4 men enter, 1 man leaves. Jubal Khan successfully survived the trials set and emerged as the new leader of the chapter. During his time, Jubal has fought countless battles and faced an endless array of opponents. One of his greatest achievements came during the Jopal Uprising, when a band of insurrectionists sought to force the world of Jopal to secede from the Imperium. Jubal led the White Scars' first brotherhood in several raids and strikes against the enemy's supply and communication lines. Such was the devastation wrought that the enemy were forced to divert large numbers of troops to deal with the White Scars. But this allowed the regiments of the Astra Militarum to batter through the weakened front lines and end the insurrection. Yet, his most famous action was at the Battle of Chagoris, when the White Scars' homeworld of Chagoris came under assault by the forces of chaos under the command of Huron Blackheart and his Red Corsairs. Yet, Jubal Khan was still fighting on Armageddon during the third war of that horrid world. His forces returned to Chagoris while the White Scars' garrison forces were defending the world under the command of Barutai Khan of the Second Brotherhood, but proved ineffective at turning the tide until the arrival of a strike force commanded by Kor'sarro Khan of the Third Brotherhood, the Master of the Hunt, successfully forced the Red Corsairs to withdraw. Seeking revenge for the severe damage inflicted on Chagoris, the Great Khan Jubal led a daring attack upon Sitnar, the vast space station seized by Huron Blackheart as a main dockyard for his piratical war fleets. In a swift naval attack, the Seathnar was boarded from multiple locations, each war party racing into the station and planting melta-bomb charges. After brutal fighting, Jubal Khan and his honor guard reached the Seathnar's heart and caused catastrophic damage to its plasma reactors, but became trapped by the collapsing corridors. But Jubal Khan survived. Unfortunately, it was because he was captured by the Red Corsairs and taken before the brutal pirate king, Huron Blackheart. Solar weeks after the White Scars' attack on Seathnar, the White Scars ambushed the warship on which Jubal Khan was imprisoned. They liberated their lord, but found him tortured close to death. Jubal Khan was returned to Chorus and installed into a life-preserving apothecarian cradle in his inner sanctum. Jubal Khan still lives, and thanks to his indomitable spirit, remains capable of serving as his chapter's lord and grand strategist. Prognosis for his physical recovery are dire, however, and many whisper that it might have been kinder for the great Khan to die in battle than to face a future trammeled within the stratagem, unable to lift a blade or sit in a saddle. Since he was retrieved from the clutches of the Red Corsairs, Jubal has ruled from his chambers in the White Scars Fortress Monastery of Quanzhou, where his ravaged body hangs in a life support cradle of burnished calipers and hissing stim dispensers. He is examined daily by the chief apothecary, but Ogole's prognosis never improves. The great Khan's body has been subjected to untold horrors. It is beyond the Imperium's arts to heal. All the apothecaries can hope to do is sustain his mind for as long as possible. The shadow of the traumas he suffered at the hands of the Red Corsairs' torturers lies heavy upon him, but Jubal has lost none of his keenness. He issues commands with relentless assurance, seen through the eyes of White Scar's outriders, and orchestrating his chapter's actions on a segmentum-wide scale. If anything, it seems his strategic intellect has increased with his physical confinement, freed from the distractions of leading his armies in person. Jubal's will is enacted through his closest advisors, who ensure his orders are relayed clearly to the many White Scar strike forces on campaign at any time. So, what do you think of this odd Great Khan, brother?
I have actually got a couple of questions for you real quick. Well, first off, anyways, I know this isn't about the Khan, but Huron Blackheart. For those of you, who... What?
No, we aren't going into him.
Oh, we got to talk about him a little bit. I mean, he is kind of important to the invasion of Chagorus. But this is the same guy, for those, anyways, who are wondering, that I talked about in the Badab War, called Luft Horon.
He went off the deep end because he wouldn't pay taxes?
Something like that. That's a really... No, it was more along the lines of he stopped paying taxes because he wanted to actually conquer the Maelstrom, and the high lords of Terra wouldn't even give him the time of day. They were just like, "No, you just keep doing what you're doing right now." And he's like, "So just slowly losing forces." And they're like, "Yeah, just keep doing that because technically you're winning." And then he said, "You know what? I'm going to stop paying taxes because apparently they're not doing anything." And then the High Lords of Terra got up and they said, "That's heresy." And they sent every Space Marine chapter they could get their hands on against him. But
like I said, because he didn't pay taxes, he ended up going crazy.
I mean, I will say he's actually a fairly interesting villain, because as opposed to every other major villain we've ever talked about, like for instance, any of the Primarchs or Horus Lupercal or even Abaddon, all of them anyways made this decision to just strike against the Empire because they hated the Empire. Luft Horon, on the other hand, was literally forced into it by the Empire. It's kind of an interesting story, but regardless. So
instead of the Empire, he just hated the High Lords.
That was a lot of it, yeah. He was valiantly fought for the Empire even after he stopped paying taxes. But regardless, for those anyways who are wondering, Huron Blackheart is the same guy as Luft Horon. He has just moved on to now being the villain. And what a horrible villain he has become, I will say. Now, real quick, anyways, the invasion of Chagorus, or the Battle of Chagorus, that takes place in the late 41st millennium or 42nd.
It happens.
It's fairly recent, right?
It happened shortly after KDFL.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
that's
it
when
is
like all the Maelstroms stuff happened, and that's one of the reasons why Chagorus suffered from an attack of a mass amount of demons at the same time. So it wasn't just the Red Corsairs. Red Corsairs also had demons on their side, which, helped.
They were getting help actually from Abaddon at the time. Abaddon at some point ended up meeting up or talking with Huron Blackheart, and he ended up actually sending him some forces through the Immaterium. But of all the people, anyways, he runs into, it's the White Scars. Which, by the way, Yuksen and I kind of talked about this because we were wondering, anyways, throughout the Badab War, why the White Scars never showed up. Because they're actually fairly close. But regardless, I think it's fairly interesting that he's popped back up again. And he's become actually a true villain. I mean,
one of the things I also find that was unfortunate for him is one of the groups that was there, which he kind of, he himself was there, not just part of his company. Was the group that are the only ones that really, really train and stack defense.
Oh, so, well, it kind of makes sense they would be left behind, right, to guard Chagorus.
Well, not all of them, though.
Yeah.
Or the main guy.
But I guess my question to you, Yuksen, is why haven't they shoved him into a sarcophagus yet? At least that way he can move around a little bit.
I assume he's too damaged when it comes to being stuffed in a sarcophagus, which is odd, but...
It does sound odd.
Well, that plus, they have the whole thing where generally if one's in a dreadnought, I think actually it's because being in a dreadnought limits what you're able to do, which would explain why, for example...
I guess maybe mentally it does? Actually, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. Because, I mean, like, for instance, what's his face? Your favorite guy from Spaceballs.
Bjorn?
Bjorn's been around for thousands of years, and he still seems fairly lucid. So, I mean, yes, I've heard
he also had to step down from being the Great Wolf.
So maybe that's why they haven't stuffed him into a sarcophagus yet, because he's like, no, my time as the Great Khan isn't done yet.
I think what's
trying to hold on to power, but
is one of the things that they do when you're in a dreadnought is they put you to sleep whenever you aren't being, utilized.
Right.
And, if you're a chapter master, that's not really a possibility.
Unless you're the, what is it? The Salamanders one, the Iron Draco or the Iron Dragon. He kind of stuck around anyways and was just hunky-dory. But he also, that hunky-dory is a relative term. I understand that. But not only that, but he was also he was in a dreadnought made by Vulcan. So this wasn't like a mass-produced dreadnought. This was like a custom job. So,
sorry. The best way to describe it. I think about that is like, yes, we have this car that we've modified here. It's a custom job for you.
Well, no, it's like getting, instead of, the Terran 42 standard Mustang, this is somebody that tricked it out. And as you know, Vulcan even put, flames on the sides of it. So it was a full custom job. But yes, most dreadnoughts anyways, they don't have those, special benefits to them, and they do tend to put them to sleep quite often when they're not being used. So like I said before, anyways, maybe that's why he hasn't been stuffed into sarcophagus, is because they want to continue using him as the Great Khan, or he wants to stay as the Great Khan, and everybody has enough respect for him. They're like, okay, you can keep doing that. It's going to suck, but you can keep doing that. What do you think?
Okay, so yeah, I was wrong about the defending ones being the second company. So I was wrong on that.
On what?
Oh, when I mentioned that it was the people that were trained mainly in static.
I thought that was the seventh company.
And yeah, well, technically, the way that their system is you start at the 10th and then you
Right.
work your way up to the first.
Well,
It's
10th
really
is
weird.
technically the scouts, right? Well, in most chapters, right?
And the recruits, yeah.
Right.
But this is one of the unique things about them is basically instead of them going, oh yeah, you seem like you're a good choice, we're going to throw you into this group, like apparently a lot of chapters do.
Hmm.
They make you go through every single company before you get to the first company.
Every single one of them.
Yes, unless of course
Hmm.
you're going to stay in that company, and then it's like okay, whatever. But
Hmm.
so they start off like with
So that is
being
very
trained in
different.
bikes and stuff. Then like we have to teach you how to not jump into that urge of basically orcish urge of we charge forwards.
So, well, no, hang on. That is actually fairly interesting because when I was reading about, like, for instance, the Crimson Fist and Rin's World, one of the captains, I think he's the third captain. He started out, I think, in the fourth company, and then they moved him to the first company as a veteran, and then they moved him into being a captain of whatever. I think he was the third captaincy.
Well, in all
So he
chapters that
starts
I'm
out. I mean,
aware of,
okay, so as far as I know, anyways, this is true of all Space Marines, right? They all start out in the 10th company because the
um,
10th is or whatever company that
well,
is, anyways. It's the one that
all
starts
the
out with
codex
hang on.
compliant.
It's the one that starts out anyways as it's the one with the scouts and the recruits. That's
Right.
its
All
own
the
company.
codex compliant ones, we should say.
Right. Well, even some of the ones that aren't, like for instance, the Space Wolves, they all start out with the Blood Claws, correct?
Yes, but they aren't all in one company.
I thought all the Blood Claws were in one company.
Well, Ragnar has some, and
Oh, yeah, you're
pretty
right.
sure some other Wolf Lords have some.
Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. So yeah, so all Codex Astartes compliant companies, anyways, that's the way it works. They all start in the 10th, right?
Right.
And then depending on anyways what their skills are, they kind of normally, anyways, they shuffle them to wherever they're gonna go. And then when they get better and they're just like, okay, you are officially a veteran, then they get the honor of joining in the first company. Correct?
If there's space, yes.
If
Because
there
the
is,
first company is where all the veterans are.
and there's always space because veterans don't last long because nobody lasts long in Warhammer 40K. So
And then if you become really good,
then you
uh,
become a captain or yeah.
yeah. Or if you happen to be second in command and your captain's killed, then you're more likely to jump into that slot.
Right, right.
But
And we're just talking about basic Space Marines too. We're not talking about, like, for instance, librarians or chaplains. They do their whole, they be them. It's probably the best way of saying it. But we're kind of getting far afield anyways from Jubal. So what do you think of Jubal actually still being around as the great Khan? To me, it's kind of surprising, quite frankly.
yeah, it is surprising that. Well, what's surprising to me is the fact that originally the Jubal Khan went, I will still do this, even though I'm going to be stuck in this case for who knows how long. There may be in
Right.
the future, you know, our oh so wonderful, amazing, call may be able to somehow figure out a way because apparently he can do anything basically now. Uh,
Summon Belisarius call. We need his help. But me personally, I find it kind of shocking. I mean, maybe he is really this brilliant tactical leader. I haven't read a whole lot about him. He does seem, I mean, he seems competent as the
well,
great
and
Khan.
and from what we know, it's like because he's in this thing now, because now he's able to narrow down his focus and his experience and his knowledge and tweak things. It's now all basically focused on
Running the chapter.
strategy and things like that because he doesn't have to worry about oh random bullets are flying by or I
Yeah,
gotta make sure that I don't run into something while I'm driving this thing or
I understand what you're saying, and I understand what the chronicling is saying, but at the same time, there's an old saying, and it's everyone has a plan until they get hit in the face. And what I mean by that is that, I mean, yes, well, he can sit there and be very strategic about what's going on, anyways, everywhere else. It helps to be in the moment so you can instantly react to something that's going on, especially with the White Scars and how they actually are so maneuverable and how they work. The concept of being stuck in a chair a million light years away, to me anyway, seems a little obtuse.
I think it's more the factor that he's able to look and react on things from a much wider purview, since there is somebody in charge of the first company and they can do whatever.
Right.
He's just able to focus on what everybody's doing instead of focusing on, okay, what is he doing right now? And then if I have time, I'll look to see how things are going in other places.
I can see him actually running anyways the chapter itself very managerially very well.
Yeah.
But strategically, warfare wise, I don't see him being able to make those quick instant decisions on a battlefield that you should be able to.
Well, he isn't on the battlefield. That's the point.
That's what I'm saying is the problem. But anyways, we have to move on. And if we're going to move on to anybody else, we probably should move on to Kor'sarro Khan, right? Or Kor'sarro Khan?
Yeah.
Right. Now, before we discuss the mighty Kor'sarro, we must discuss his title. For it is a very noble and prestigious position, being the Master of the Hunt. Now, the Master of the Hunt is tasked to hunt down an enemy who has clashed with the chapter in the past, and, through luck or skill, manages to survive the encounter. The first Master of the Hunt was Jubal Khan, not the one we've just been talking about, but if you recall right, Yuksen, Jubal Khan was part of Jagatai Khan's, Krieger? I think that's what they called him, his personal bodyguard.
Yeah, we aren't talking about the one that died at Terra.
Yeah, I mean, and if I recall right, you talked about him, and he ended up dying in the Solar Wars, right?
Right.
Killed by Abaddon, if I recall right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not talking about him. He was the original Master of the Hunt during the Horus Heresy. And Kor'sarro is now the 51st. So there's been 50 in between, I guess. But it's more than that. The Master of the Hunt is the avenger of his brothers, his chapter. He alone is tasked with hunting down those who have slighted the chapter, caused them anguish, and left them in failure. When the White Scars are dealt a heavy blow by the enemy, it is the task of the Master of the Hunt to seek them out and exact vengeance. This is done once every 25 years and is normally given to the Fourth Brotherhood's captain. Yet in this millennium, the task has been given to Kor'sarro Khan, who is the captain of the Third Brotherhood. Yet, how did he obtain such an auspicious title? What were his deeds that led to his promotion? Well, it's simply because of his successes. Kor'sarro Khan, killer of Demon Prince Karnak's Voldorus. Kor'sarro, who slew vicious Eldar Korsar Varlin. Kor'sarro Khan, who beheaded the vile Demon Prince known as the Doom Rider. And the Chaos Lord Paramix of the Blighted Claw Warband of Chaos Space Marines. Yes, his deeds are long and well known to the White Scars. And when he returns to Jagoras, it is a time of great celebration and moonlight feasting, for it marks the passing of another hated nemesis of the chapter. When the carousal is done, Kor'sarro surrenders his grisly trophy to the High Chaplain, who takes up a brand from the flames and burns the eyes from the dead skull. As the flesh burns and peels, the hymn of vengeance is sung, and the quarry's name is struck from the roster of the hunt. The head itself is masked in silver and set upon a lance, and laid upon the highest walls of the White Scars fortress, destined forever to stare out with its hollow gaze over the approach to the fortress monastery. The White Scars citadel is high in the Kumkarta mountains of Jagoras. The road is long, yet the silvered heads of the slain line every pace of its passage. Yet what of the man? What of the character of this mighty hunter? He is sly and cunning, yet insightful and ponderous. He has seen many enemies turn friend, and vice versa. In a Vox I covered about Illic Nightspear, a mighty Eldari ranger. He fought side by side with the alien to escape the clutches of a Necron overlord. To this day, Illic remembers Kor'sarro as a friend. When Kor'sarro became a Primaris Space Marine, he was summoned to Jubal Khan's court. Jubal Khan was not pleased to learn that Kor'sarro Khan had undergone the Rubicon Primaris treatment, to become a Primaris Marine in the wake of the Battle of Chagorus. The two proud warriors faced one another, and it is said that the air crackled between them like dry lightning over the Kumkarta Mountains. Kor'sarro virtually glowed with the newfound vitality of his transformation. Yet it was he who averted his gaze, who had the humility to kneel and ask forgiveness of his lord for his rash deed. One might wonder why the Master of Hunt did such a thing. Here was a broken man, one who he could usurp with a mighty swing of his sword, or even simply scoff at his dominion. Yet he does neither, and shows humility. If you wish to know the character of this man, it is in these simple actions: tradition, honor, duty. These are the words that bind Kor'sarro's soul. With it, he is probably the most powerful warrior of the White Scars. Without it, he is nothing. What passed between the two Khans that day was not recorded, and none know of what was said. What is known is that when Kor'sarro emerged from his audience with the chapter master, he wasted no time in calling his battle brothers to him and preparing to take the fight to the heretic still ravaging the Yasan sector. His hunt was not over, but for now it was set aside, for a new duty was his to complete. Yet enough of his character, Zeckthar, you might say. What of his deeds?
Oh, do tell the story of the Hunt of Valdorius. It's one of my favorites.
Very well. Let me see. Well, it started back when... Yeah. At the Centennial Feast in celebration of his ascension at 855.M41. Kublai, the great Khan of the White Scars at the time, announced his intention to bring to justice one of the greatest foes ever to have opposed the chapter, Carnax Voldarius, known to the White Scars as Blade Spite, and was a demon prince and strike master of the renegade Alpha Legion Chaos Space Marines, and as vile a foe as any the White Scars had ever fought. Trillions of men and women had died when Voldarius had unleashed the merciless horror of the Blood Tide some 2,000 years earlier in 034.M38, and billions more had perished in the sacrilegious massacres dedicated to the ruinous powers of chaos on the worlds of Kinto, Lauren, and Blind Hope. Now the great Khan declared Blade Spite's triumphal reign of terror would cease. Kor'sarro Khan was dispatched with his company and charged to return with the demon prince's head, or not at all. It was a hunt to last more than a solar decade, though Kor'sarro caught sight of his prey on the battlefields of the worlds of Zoron and Kaval, and almost came within striking distance in the choked under hives of Modana. Chance always conspired to save Voldarius from his deserved fate. And so, the trail finally led Kor'sarro Khan and his brotherhood to Quintus, a desolate imperial fortress world to the galactic south of Chagorus in the Ultima Segmentum. Quintus had only recently been one of the Imperium of Man's chief bulwarks against the brutal orc empires of the Jodagha stars. But that was before the coming of Carnax Voldarius, who had arrived with his Alpha Legion forces to discover the presence of another traitor legion warband, this time of the Night Lords, already within the system. Following a necessary period of brutal readjustment, Voldarius joined both forces under his command. Through intimidation and false promises, the Demon Prince's combined warband had infiltrated and corrupted Quintus's planetary defense force, leading them to take up rebellion against the Emperor of Mankind. The White Scars found no mere warband of Chaos Space Marines on the world, but a whole world's population ready to stand against them in defense of the ruinous powers emissaries. Yet Kor'sarro would not be so easily denied his prize. Leaving their strike cruiser in the outer system, the White Scars mounted their Thunderhawk gunships. Following rigorously plotted stealth trajectories, the attack craft slipped through Quintus's defense grid and landed amongst the blasted canyons southwest of the planetary capital city of Mankara. Kor'sarro expected to have a battle on his hands to secure the landing zone, but he found no enemies, but rather unexpected allies in the shape of Captain Kayvon Shrike and his Raven Guard 3rd Company.
Shrike! One of my faves. If I recall right, one of Damien Rushko's favorites, yes?
Indeed. Now, Shrike had been on campaign on the Targus system With news of Quintus's fall to chaos had reached his ears, with the Targus battle zone swinging towards the victory of the Imperium forces, Shrike redeployed his own company of Astartes to Quintus and had been fighting a guerrilla war against the Night Lords invaders ever since. The piloting expertise that had allowed the White Scars to make planetfall unobserved by the Quintan rebels had not been skillful enough to go unnoticed by Captain Shrike's forces, and the Raven Guard had mustered to meet the new arrivals. As dropships deployed the White Scars support vehicles, the two Astartes captains held a council of war. Neither entirely trusted the other. The rivalry between the White Scars and the Raven Guard chapters went back many thousands of standard years, but both Shrike and Kor'sarro knew that they had little choice but to set aside their inherent differences, weighty though they were.
Pardon me, brother, but I was unfamiliar with the two chapters having a rivalry.
Yeah.
So I did a bit of digging, and it really has more to do with time than anything else. A slight here or there regarded by each chapter, regardless of what was meant.
Did you by any chance find something that is at least a little or remotely plausible as to why they actually have a feud?
The best way I've seen it described was from a comment from the Death Watch's first founding, which I will quote.
Oh,
One example of such rivalry can be found in the case of the Raven Guard and the White Scars, who have harbored a mutual mistrust dating back centuries. In truth, there may be no single cause of the bad blood between the two chapters, but the mere mentioning of several battles are sure to raise the ire of Raven Guard and White Scar alike.
uh-oh.
The assault on Hiveland May is one such conflict, as is the last march on the Sapphire Worlds. Most acrimonious of all is Operation Kronos, in which a venerated Raven Guard chaplain fell to enslaver domination in circumstances where a nearby White Scar's force might have been able to intervene. The ill will created by these and numerous other incidents has led to the two chapters regarding one another with barely contained loathing, a situation that's none an end to anytime soon.
Interesting antidote, brother. Very, very intriguing. Yet, the two decided to work together because the Alpha Legion and their treacherous Quintan vassals were simply too numerous for one company to defeat without the other's aid. And so the Space Marines' battle plans had to be drawn accordingly. And so the following morning before dawn, Shrike led his company in a surprise assault against the traitors garrisoned in an orbital defense battery some leagues west of Mankara. This was the method of war Shrike and his battle brothers had perfected against the forces of Rogue Skullrock. And within moments of the assault's beginning, the traitor forces were in disarray. A good portion of the complex was already in the Astartes' hands when Carnax Voldaris, seeing the danger, dispatched half of his Alpha Legion traitor marines and much of Mankara's garrison as reinforcement. But Shrike had drawn his plans well. As the Raven Guard captain led assault squads into the heart of the complex, his remaining forces entrenched themselves on the perimeter. So it was, Valdoris's tide of reinforcement crashed upon the bastions of the defense complex's outer fortifications like the sea upon distant shores. The Alpha Legion aspiring Chaos champion directing the assault was a Kenny, though, and held his deadliest troops back from the slaughter. Instead, he sent wave after wave of Chaos cultists and traitor PDF troops into the guns of the Raven Guard, casually expending their worthless lives in search of a weakness to exploit. Such a weakness offered itself up when one of the bastions cracked asunder, broken by fire from Iron Soul, a massive Baneblade tank manned by a traitorous Quintan crew. Seizing his opportunity, the aspiring champion led his reserves forward. Now, before I continue forward, one of the few tanks that we did not talk about last week was a Baneblade. And Yuksen, you mind giving us the details on such a mighty tank?
Well, first off, there were many tanks that we didn't talk about.
That's it's a good point. The Glaive is another one, anyways. It's actually one of my favorites that we didn't talk about. But anyways, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the Baneblade.
Let's forget about all of the Rust tanks. And
well, okay. Well, leaving Rust Texas, it makes sense why we didn't talk about them because they're Imperial Guard tanks, correct? The Space Marines don't use them.
And Space Marines don't use Bane Blades either.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, well, since I already stopped this, go ahead and tell us about the Beyblade.
The Bane Blade is the primary super heavy tank of the Astra Militarum and one of the largest and oldest armored fighting vehicles in the service of the Imperial Armed Forces. The tank is a venerated standard template construct, or STC design, with 10 people needed to fully crew one. It is also one of the oldest STC designs in existence. They are often used as command vehicles by Imperial commanders. Also, there is a famous one that
Other than Iron Soul?
Yarrick rides on.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember what it's called right now.
Well, before I carry on, real quick, anyways, what kind of a punch does this thing pack? Is it is it like the glaive where it's got a like a beam weapon, or is it like a really big shell that it fires?
Well, it has one really big one, and then it has some regular tanks cannons on top of that.
So it's got more than just one cannon.
Yes. It has more than one.
I see. So it is literally a mobile artillery station.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
They say it takes 10 people to man it, but you can fit more than 10 people in it, probably.
Jeez.
It is massive.
It is a monster of war. Fair enough.
Yes.
Well, now that you guys know what a Bane Blade is, moving on. Over 300 Chaos Space Marines of the Alpha Legion and the Night Lords flung themselves at that single point in the defenses. The Raven Guard stood their ground, pouring bolter fire into the oncoming horde, but their numbers were thin, and the enemy ferocious. Shrike emerged from the depths of the complex to lead a counterattack, and the enemy fell back wherever the Shadow Captain trod. But, little by little, the Raven Guard began to give ground. The Alpha Legion aspiring champion roared his praise to the ruinous powers and drove his men forward over the dead and dying. It was then that the White Scars struck. Before Shrike had led the assault on the orbital defense complex, the White Scars had concealed themselves in the caves to the south. Now, with the bulk of the Chaos Force strung out, the White Scars launched their attack. With a throaty roar of engines, rhinos, and assault bikes broke from the shadows and spurred towards the fray. The Iron Soul was the first to feel the White Scars' wrath. Though the Beyblade's commander bellowed at his crew, the massive tank could not turn swiftly enough to engage the new threat. Kor'sarro's vanguard, skilled bikers all, tore through the traitors that protected the Iron Soul's flanks. Never once slowing their breakneck charge, the White Scars bikers swarmed about the adamantium monster's flanks, targeting its sponsons with meltafire and its vision slits with flames. One by one, the Iron Soul's guns were silenced, and the bikers spurred on towards the embattled Raven Guard, leaving only a crippled tank and slain traitors in their rear. Dismayed, the unforeseen assault to their flank and the swift demise of the Iron Soul, the traitors fled. The Alpha Legion fought on to the last, but the White Scars were upon them. Squads of bikers swept through the ranks of the Chaos Space Marines, blades and lances flashing. More White Scars disgorged from rhinos, bolters coughing death at the foe. By the time Shrike led the Raven Guard over the defenses and into the fray, the outcome of the battle was no longer in doubt. Caught between the veiled strike of the Raven Guard and the ferocious onslaught of the White Scars, the Alpha Legionaries, so often architect of cunning ambushes and ruses themselves, were outmaneuvered and overrun. Captains Shrike and Kor'sarro had no time for celebration, though. Voldaris and his followers still had control of the capital city of Mankara and, if given time, would be able to fortify it further. Leaving a small garrison in the orbital defense complex, the White Scars took to their rhinos and the Raven Guard to their Thunderhawk gunships. Mankara's defenses remained a concern. Both Shrike's and Kor'sarro's companies had traveled light and could only boast a single Vindicator between them, the aptly named Thunderheart. Fortunately, the efficiency of Voldaris' tyrannical rule over Quintus had not extended to basic maintenance. A salvo of Hellstrike missiles from the Raven Guard's Thunderhawks and a brief pounding from the Thunderheart Demolisher cannon brought down a sizable segment of Mankara's outer wall. Before the traitor garrison could react, the White Scars were already in the city. Not wishing to get caught in the brawl of vicious urban warfare, the White Scars fought from their transports, exiting them only to launch lightning assaults. White Scar bike squadrons hurtled through the streets and alleys of Mankara, swarming wherever the defenders were unprepared, whittling their opponents down through attrition without granting them the slightest chance to answer in kind. As the White Scars commanded the battle at street level, Shrike's Thunderhawks deployed squad after squad of Raven Guard into the upper levels of the city's mini manufactorums and basilicas. True to their speciality, the Raven Guard swiftly and silently descended upon the unprepared defenders. Beset from above and below, the heretical defenders of the traitor PDF stood little chance. Many threw down their arms and begged for mercy, but there was none to be had for those who had betrayed the Emperor of Mankind. At the end, only Valdorius and his personal bodyguard remained. Infused with the battle rage, the Demon Prince fought on against impossible odds. Many battle brothers fell to Valdorius' wrath that day, but the vengeance of the Space Marines would not be denied, and they pressed forward to finish their hated foe. Encircled, outnumbered, and trapped in the shadow of the Grand Cathedral of the Emperor's wisdom, Karnax Valdorius finally met his end. At the last, even Valdarius' unholy strength, born of chaos undivided, could not prevail against the sacred determination of his Astartes' enemies. Pierced and pinned to a fallen statue of the Emperor, he had long ago betrayed by Shrike's talons in perhaps a rare instance of truly poetic justice. Valdorius could not escape the vengeance of Kor'sarro's ancient power sword, Moonfang. With one terrible blow, the White Scars Khan cleaved the Demon Prince's head from his shoulders, erasing the foul stain of his existence from the material universe. A solar month later, with Quintus now in the firm hands of the Astra Militarum forces sent from Talarn, Kor'sarro and Shrike exchanged their final words and went their separate ways once again. Shrike returned to the Targus battle zones to face the Orc once more in the never-ending vigilance required to keep the Imperium's borders safe. Claiming Voldarius' head as his prize, Kor'sarro Khan returned to a hero's welcome in the great fortress monastery of the White Scars on Chagoris, known as the Palace of Kwanzao. Karnax Voldarius' head soon joined the long line of other foes of the Emperor that lined the approach to the palace. Each captain took with him the respect of the other and the glory of a hard-won battle, and perhaps the beginnings of a newly reforged brotherhood between chapters that had for so long been rivals.
Like I said, brother, one of my favorites, a true epic. But tell me, brother, where do you fit Kor'sarro and the heroes of Jagatai's lineage?
Personally, he's got to be up there, right? He's got to be one of them top tier dudes. When you're talking about like the greatest heroes of the White Scars, he's got to be up there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would put him above Jubal, but that's me. What about you?
Which Jubal?
Ooh, that's a good question. The first Jubal was actually pretty cool. But he did get killed by Abaddon. And that was Abaddon pre-Abaddon War Master. So I probably have to give it to Kor'sarro. First.
Okay.
What about you?
I would think he's way up there also. Out of, the massive amount of heroes that we have listed for the White Scars.
I could definitely see if they ever find Jagatai Khan in the webway, or if he ever finds his way out, I could definitely see him riding alongside Kor'sarro. Or vice versa, I should say.
Yeah. So no, I can't see that. I can see maybe Kor'sarro following him, but not
Kor'sarro's like, you can ride with me. Jagatai's like, no, I think you got it the wrong way, Chief. You can ride with me. Fair enough. Yeah, his character I really like because he actually embodies to me a lot of what Jagatai is. He's this avenging hunter, but at the same time, he's very cool and collected.
You mentioned that he has that hawk, right?
Who?
Kor'sarro?
Jagatai? I don't know. Jagatai had a hawk, but No, I didn't know he has a
He has that cybernetic hawk thing.
the two things that I know that he has notably anyways is that he has got his own personal bike that's called, I think it's called Moon Shadow, and then he has that sword called Moonfang. Both are very cool.
After his wonderful talk with Jubal Khan,
Uh-huh.
Jubal gave him his cyber eagle
Oh, does it have a name?
Anzuk.
Anzuk. All right.
And some think that he gave him that so they could keep a tighter leash on Kor'sarro. One of the things that pops in my mind whenever they mention that, yes, nobody knows what is said, what pops in my mind is Kor'sarro got a massive, massive dressing down. You
See, this would
but
only work with the White Scars, because if this happened anyways with the Space Wolves, and it was like Grimnar, and he's like stuck in this machine, and he starts raining down anyways on Ragnar, Ragnar would probably just punch him in the face. You're like, are you done? I've got other things to do. Yes, I can understand that you're displeased with me, but
then
unless
he'd probably be
you're
hit
planning
back.
on getting out of your wheelchair and coming and getting me, it's like that the bird is like, we'll keep watch over you. It's like, what's he gonna do? What if the bird all of a sudden is like, nope, you can't do that? And Kor'sarro's in the middle of combat. He's gonna be like, screw you, bird. Just keep doing what he wants to do. It's not like the bird's gonna stop him. I don't know. I think there's too much barbarian in me that deal with the White Scars. It's honor duty. Yes. No, I don't have a problem with that. But the concept of like you said, anyways, dressing down Kor'sarro Khan, probably one of your greatest leaders, to me is just foolish. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you're going to sit there anyways and tell him, like, look, this was just a dumb idea, and here's the reason why, and you can explain all the reasons why, and he's like, yeah, I agree with you. That was terrible. I'm sorry about doing that. That's one thing. But like dressing him down is like, look, you sniveling snake, how dare you go against the plans of the great Khan, and blah, 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 you know, kind of thing. It's like, dude, that's just dumb. It's probably also why, anyways, they say, anyways, that neither is spoken, anyways, of what was said there. You know what probably ended up happening? They just played a game of Go.
And just like there was a lot of profanity. That's why nobody hears about it.
No, I'm thinking, anyways, they just played. I just think they played a game of Go. And as they're playing it, anyways, just chuckling to themselves, just going, you know, we're in here long enough. People are going to really start wondering what we should say. We shouldn't tell them. Yes, that's a great idea. I mean, the only way that I can see Kor'sarro and Jubal working together is if there is some sort of friendship there or companionship. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know.
I mean, we're hypothesizing here, Yuksen. Well, I know that it's not documented.
Hypothesis I do not have.
I just don't see that relationship working unless it's like the guy that you're going to be talking about this week, Pedro Cantor, and the captain of the third chapter, Cortez. Yeah. The fact that, I mean, yes,
Cortez, along with Cantor.
Yes.
Pedro.
But the fact that they've known each other for so long, and they've known each other before Jubal was the Great Khan too.
Right.
So I think, anyways, that breeds a friendship and a closeness that I think really helps the two of them work well as leaders. I could see them having a very similar relationship that Pedro does with Cortez.
One of the things that makes me really interesting, what makes it really interesting to me about Kor'sarro is who he gives his command over to when he goes to these hunts.
Now, who does he give it over to?
He gives it over to a chaplain.
Oh, it's not the guy that we're talking about next, is it?
No. The guy we're talking about next is in charge of the 10th Brotherhood.
Yes. It's your favorite guy, the guy who runs the scout program in every single Codex compliant chapter.
Or looks over the youngins.
Yes. I mean, I believe in the first one you talked about Ulrich. who does that for the Space Wolves. In the Ultramarines, it was Torrin, correct?
I
Sergeant
believe
Torrin?
that's what his name was.
Yeah.
We didn't really have many people when it came to the salamanders, so.
But moving on, anyways, like you said, anyways, this is the guy who's in charge of the scouts and whatnot, right? What's his name again?
Right.
And this is the most recent one, correct?
Right.
Okay. What's his name? I can never say it
Jodagha
right.
Khan.
Oh, sorry, I was talking. Like I said, I can never say his name right. I just call him Jod. But what's his name, brother?
Jodagha Khan.
Oh, yes. Why don't you tell us about Jod Yuksen?
He is captain of the 10th Brotherhood, as known as the Master of Braves. He is also the chapter's Master of Recruits and Master of Reconnaissance. Out of everything he has done, his leadership during the Taladus War is what truly stands out. As such, I will cover the part of the Taladus War the White Scars were involved in. Because, talking about the Taladus War would take way too much time, so we're just focusing on what they did.
Perhaps we'll do a bonus box of it at some point.
So first off, in the Taladus system, the Night Lords under Yugsen Khan swept through the Taladus asteroid field named Tears of the Emperor. The Night Lord ship known as the Nightmare of Celix drifted through the Tears of the Emperor, broadcasting its terrible signal across the stars. Following the Siren ship closely were the shadowed hulls of the Night Lord Reaver ships. As Imperial cruisers and escort ships were dragged off course into the belt, these Reaver ships would strike hard and fast, firing boarding hooks and unleashing hunting parties of heretic Astartes upon their stricken prey. Such was the horror let loose by the Night Lords that the tears of the Emperor burned blood red. The asteroid field was visible from the surface of Taladus's war-torn worlds, a ragged wound in the sky that promised a bloody and terrible end. As the battle for the Taladus system raged on, more and more desperately needed reinforcements disappeared. Driven mad by the strength of the psychic broadcast, navigators were drawn unerringly to the Night Lord's trap. Astra Militarum generals and officers of the fleet despaired, for every lost ship was a heavy blow to the Imperium's hopes of containing the Taladus conflict. Salvation came from an unexpected quarter. A strike force of White Scars Vanguard Space Marines under the command of Jodagha Khan, the captain of the 10th Brotherhood, had been tracking the movements of Yugsen Khan's Night Lords for several months, following the psychic spoor of their victims. The Khan's stealth cruisers had followed the flight of the Nightmare of Celix straight to Taladus and the Tears of the Emperor. There were no signs of the Siren ship itself, but the sudden shriek of proximity sensors revealed a host of incoming vessels. Dagger-shaped Night Lord strike craft raging towards them at full speed. The resulting void battle was swift and brutal. The smaller Night Lord's force had approached under the cover of the asteroids and was upon the White Scars before they could bring their lance batteries to bear. The cruiser Thunderstone was boarded by Chaos Raptors before being driven off by the White Scars infiltrators. As soon as the tide of the battle turned, the Night Lords slipped back into the asteroid field's cover. The Scars attempted to pursue, but were confronted by traps such as cyclonic mines and rogue astropathic signals that drew them into ambushes. Truly, the Night Lords had turned the Tears of the Emperor into their hellish playground. However, the Scars were eventually able to use precognition arrays to navigate a path through the haunted darkness. So began a shadow war of escalating brutality as the White Scars attempted to track down the Night Lords. As they hunted the Night Lords, the Scars came upon ambush sites of raptors and demon engines. Whether they were located on drifting asteroids or the skeletons of dead vessels, every inch of ground was rigged with las-grid traps, scatter mines, and booby-trapped corpses. Scars and cursors took a heavy toll clearing out each site, utilizing Divinator-class auspexes to fashion a full-spectrum analysis of the battlefield and disperse this vital data to their battle brothers. Meanwhile, claws of elite Chaos Terminators launched teleportation strikes into the heart of White Scar formations, and Helldrakes preyed upon their dropships in the vacuum of space. Nightmarish warp talons breached the hulls of Space Marine cruisers, running amok in the darkness. For all the cruel ingenuity of the Night Lord's attacks, the White Scars, under the command of the Khan, adapted with remarkable speed. They feigned desperate retreats, drawing the traitor forces into kill zones of their own. Damaged ships were sacrificed to lure in those Night Lords drunk on the thrill of murder and torture. The ambushers suddenly became the ambushed as White Scar's warriors appeared in their midst, yelling blood-curdling war cries and engaging the Night Lords in brutal, close-quarter battles. Yet even as the momentum of the battle shifted, the nightmare of Celix remained unseen, still broadcasting its demented song. Until the White Scars had cut off every false signal, the desperate fighting within the tiers of the Emperor would continue.
So the war is still going on?
Despite some sources saying yes, I found a book known as Throne of Light, written by the scribe Guy Haley, that confirms that it has ended with the Imperial forces emerging as the victors. So, Zeckthar, who do you have for our final notable character?
Well, I was going to talk about Seraph, who's actually a fairly interesting character that was a liaison for the Tanith First and Oli during the Sabbat Crusade Wars. But unfortunately, I'm still suffering from a plague of Nurgle that I had last week, and my voice isn't quite up to actually doing that this week. But take heart, we will actually talk about it next week when we do our Q&A, and we just kind of briefly go over some interesting facts about the White Scars. Unless you mind, Yuksen.
Like, yes, I mind.
No, you don't mind. Okay, good. Well, on that sad note, unfortunately, we're out of time this week. But join us next week, like I said, anyways, for our questions and answers. And also some talking about some random things, like some interesting anecdotes on the chapter, as well as some cool stories and our notable character that we missed this week, Seraph.
Also, for those who don't know, I've been doing some short foxes. This next month, I'm thinking about starting to do minor chapters. So if you guys have a particular one that you want me to talk about, go ahead and put it in the comments. Well, thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this Fox. Feel free to like, follow, subscribe, and comment. And don't forget to check out the shop. We have some cool stuff there, like clothes, pillows, and hats.
Have a great day. And as always, until next time, this is Zeckthar.
And Yuksen.
Signing off.